While millions are dedicating 67 minutes to community service, it's also a moment to reflect on the man behind the global icon. His leadership, humility, and unwavering commitment to justice, reconciliation, and human dignity. Now, few people had the privilege of witnessing the legacy up close. Our next guest, former SABC News correspondent Makhosini Mgitywa, traveled extensively with Madiba during some of the defining moments of South Africa's democratic journey, also uncovering both his local engagements and international visits. His experiences provided him with a unique behind-the-scenes perspective of one of the world's most admired statesmen. He joins us now to share his memories of Madiba, reflect on the lessons he learned while covering him, and also to discuss why Nelson Mandela's legacy continues to inspire people around the world. Makhosini Mgitywa, thank you so much for joining us on SA Today. So you spent a considerable amount of time with Madiba as a statesman and global icon as well. When looking back, what is the memory that comes to mind when you think of Madiba, the first memory that comes to mind?
Well, the first memory for me would be how he made me feel.
Yeah.
Right. I had gone to the foundation's premises to cover his story, and I was told that Mr. Mandela wanted to see me. Now, a lot of people at the time wanted to see Mandela, and now he wanted to see me. You can imagine how I felt. So I sat in an office and waited for him for a time that was like 10 minutes, the longest 10 minutes of my life. But when he walked in, he first wanted to know about me, who I was. If I was Swati, he wanted to know about my family. You know, we spent a considerable time, him talking about me before he could speak about himself and what he wanted from me. So I think that for me is something that stands out because I've interacted with a lot of politicians, a lot of heads of state. But for me, it was the first time that I encountered a head of state or former head of state at the time who wanted to know about me and my family. And that made me feel special. And when he started the conversation about what he wanted us to talk about and how he wanted me to help him, already it was very easy for me to get on with his program.
Yeah. Let's look at the brain of the man that is Nelson Mandela. Was there a particular encounter or even a conversation that you had with Madiba that really left a lasting impression, if you will, on you, either personally or even professionally, Makhosini?
There are many. I will mention just one thing that for me, adds to his humanity, that he was a human being, first and foremost. I was assigned to his stories. In fact, when he wanted to talk to me, he wanted me to cover his stories. And the management at SABC News agreed that I would cover his stories. But then at that time, he was busy mediating the issue of Libya. You remember that two Libyans were involved in the downing of a passenger jet liner over Scotland. And Libya wanted to hand those people over, and they were prepared to pay reparations. So he was the mediator in that, and he did not inform me that he was going to go to Libya, and I had only from the office, the SABC News office, that he was in Libya, and I was understandably very upset. And I indicated to his staff that I felt that he had cut me off. I needed to know about the story so that the SABC could send me there. And he apologized the way Nelson Mandela apologized. We were somewhere in Sun City in a gathering, and then he said, I have a lot of heroes. People that I look up to. Makhosini there is one of my heroes.
Yeah.
So that was his way of apologizing. And he was not, an apology was not above him. And certainly apologizing to somebody who was much younger and less important than myself. And I think that speaks to his humanity as a man.
At a time when South Africa is reflecting a lot on issues around leadership, Makhosini, covering someone of Mandela's stature must have been a remarkable journalistic experience as well. What did you learn about leadership simply by observing him?
I think leadership was something that he was born with and something that he grew into. He was a leader, I can think of so many things, but I think where he showed his leadership, it was when the United States of America was planning to attack Iraq without the mandate of the United Nations. When many people were afraid to speak up, Nelson Mandela wasn't. He spoke directly, and he, at some point, he even said that the president of the United States couldn't think straight. And he did that knowing very well that America was a very powerful country, but he said what needed to be said at that moment, and he understood that only he, perhaps he and a few other world leaders, could speak against the United States without serious reprisals from the United States. Yeah. And he did that. And I think on that score, he served humanity and he served the world peace through his position as a respected and a global statesman.
Mr. Mgitywa, one of Madiba's defining qualities was his ability to unite people despite deep divisions. Looking at South Africa today, what lessons from his leadership remain most relevant in 2026?
I think, I may just, deviate a little bit and say this, that, a lot of people, take Mandela as someone who was a saint who couldn't do no wrong. And we see that, present day generations, they look at him with skepticism because they're looking at the legacy of his efforts. And I think it's important for us to look beyond the aura of Nelson Mandela and look at what he left for us as a country and whether those that he left in power carried his legacy forward. And I would say, unfortunately, I don't think they did. South Africa remains the most unequal society, and that inequality is racially based in that white people, even though they are fewer in numbers, they control the bulk of the economy and they own most of the arable and commercial land. On the other hand, black people, even though they constitute the majority and they're indigenous people in this land, they are the most poor, they are the most sidelines, marginalized, who are at the margins of the economy. Yeah. So I think that beyond looking at what Nelson Mandela did, which was correct at the time as far as I'm concerned, but we needed to take the baton and run with it and make sure that the inequality that we see today is eliminated, and to make sure that we don't only alleviate poverty, but we also empower economically those who were ostracized and marginalized by the apartheid system and colonization.
Makhosini Mgitywa, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. Those were the reflections of former SABC News correspondent Makhosini Mgitywa, whose unique experiences covering Nelson Mandela offered us a rare glimpse into the character and leadership of one of history's greatest statesmen. Of course, as South Africans commemorate Nelson Mandela Day, his legacy reminds us that leadership is rooted in humility, compassion, and service to others. While 67 minutes of community service is a powerful symbol, Madiba's life challenges all of us to make those values part of our everyday actions. Mr. Mgitywa, thank you so much for sharing your memories and insights with us, and thank you for your time.